The controversy centers around concentrated animal feeding operations, also called CAFOs, where farmers feed and raise thousands of livestock in one facility.
In Oregon's serene countryside, small farms are scattered across the landscape. However, trouble arises as the state imposes strict regulations on these farms, particularly regarding water usage. Sarah King, a small farmer, finds herself caught in the middle of this conflict, facing the financial burden of costly upgrades. As tensions rise within the farming community, questions linger about the motives behind Oregon's actions. What mysteries lie behind these sweeping regulations, and how will they impact the future of small-scale farming in the state? Join us as we explore the heart of Oregon's agricultural landscape to uncover the truth. The fight for small businesses in Oregon. Oregon has started closing down small farms and gardens where people sell their vegetables quite forcefully. The government is even using space technology to find these places and tell them to stop their work. The main reasons they give are to save water and keep the underground water clean. They use two specific rules to do this. Let's talk about these rules and look at some examples to understand how they're putting pressure on people who farm on a small scale. In the beginning of the year, a legal case highlighted how the Oregon government and big dairy companies are making things tough for smaller farmers. A report in the National Review showed that Oregon has changed what it means by CAFOs, which stands for Confined Animal Feeding Operations, to include not just big dairy farms. Now, this term also covers small farms that have chickens, goats, or any place where animals live on surfaces like gravel or concrete. So what does Oregon say is a CAFO? It's any place where many animals are kept and fed in areas made to handle rain and bad weather using concrete, rock, or similar materials. This includes places for horses, cows, sheep, pigs, dairy, and chickens. This new way of defining things has made a lot of small farmers very upset, leading them to sue the state. It's not just about how big a farm is. Even those with just a few cows for milking are in trouble. For example, Sarah King runs a small farm called Godspeed Hollow Farm in Newberg, Oregon. She keeps her farming simple on her 11 acres with just 3 cows for milking. She's not a big operation, but according to Oregon, her farm is considered a CAFO just because she has a milking station that's 100 feet long. Now, they want her to spend $100,000 to make changes to her farm to meet the CAFO rules. This is a huge amount for someone with a small farm, especially just to meet requirements for a few cows on a milking stand. Clearly, there's a big gap in understanding that's causing problems for small farmers like Sarah. In Oregon, the way farms that keep a lot of animals in one place, known as CAFOs, are defined has recently changed, and it's causing a big stir among people who farm for a living. This new rule has been so strict that it has forced some farmers to completely stop their farming activities. But there's a silver lining for now. The enforcement of this new rule has been paused. This pause came because a group called the League of Justice saw that the rule was unfair. They took action by going to court in January, hoping to change this rule. This situation might seem at first like it's mostly about milk that hasn't been pasteurized, which is called raw milk, but it's actually affecting a wide range of farming activities. For example, if you have chickens and sell eggs, or if your chicken house has a concrete floor, which many do because it's easier to clean, you're also facing these new challenges. The process to get the necessary permits and meet all the new rules is so complicated and demanding that small-scale farmers are struggling to keep up. This is the first big problem caused by the new rules, and it's causing a lot of discussions and legal battles. But there's another rule that's just as confusing for many people. In Oregon, the law about using water is very strict. The only water you're allowed to use freely, without having to get a special permit, is rainwater. That's right. Any water that's found under the ground, even if it's right under your own property, is considered to belong to everyone. This means even if you find water on your land and want to use it for your farm or any business, you're supposed to get a permit first. This rule has caught many people by surprise and is making it even harder for small businesses and farmers who need water for their operations. This situation with water use is especially tricky. Imagine you're a small farmer who relies on well water for your crops or animals. Suddenly, you find out that you can't use that water as freely as you thought. Instead, you're told that this water is public, and you need to go through a lot of paperwork and possibly face high costs just to use water from your own land. This rule doesn't just affect farmers. It impacts anyone in Oregon trying to run a small business that requires water. It's a rule that seems to go against the idea of using natural resources wisely and supporting local businesses. The need for a permit to use groundwater has become a significant hurdle, making it difficult for small farms and businesses to thrive or even survive. These challenges are causing a lot of frustration and sparking debates about the fairness and implications of such regulations. Going deeper, we find more confusion. What's next for Oregon's farmers under these rules? When water becomes a luxury for small farms. Let's dive deeper into something really interesting. Back in 2021, a new rule was introduced, and only now are we seeing the big effects of it. Imagine small farmers, even those with just a half acre of land, being told they can't use their usual water sources anymore. They're getting official notices to stop watering their crops, which is a big problem for them. But there's a strange part. Big businesses using water for commercial and industrial reasons can use up to 5,000 gallons a day without any issue. When you think about it, a small garden doesn't use nearly that much water. So what's going on here? Why are these small farmers facing such strict rules? In Oregon, if you're growing food just for yourself and using water from your own well, there's still a limit to how much water you can use. Now let me tell you about a small farm that's really feeling the pressure from these rules. Cristina Del Campo has been running Oak Song Farm close to Eugene for 7 years. She grows blueberries, vegetables, and other local products, selling them to people in her area and earning her living this way. But then, she received a shocking letter from the Oregon Water Resources Department. They told her she couldn't use water for her crops anymore. According to Mike McCord, water is very valuable, and Oregon has controlled its use with a special system since 1909. Here's another surprising fact. The allowance to use 5,000 gallons of water a day is only meant for businesses that need water for a one-time use in commercial and industrial tasks. This means you can't use the allowance over and over for different places you might own. And there's more. The Water Resources Department has been very clear that using water under this allowance to water crops is not allowed. This puts Christina's farm, her way of making money, and her passion in a very tough spot. The rules have left her without any good options for watering her crops, threatening her farm's survival. Diving deeper into the subject of well exemptions makes the situation clearer, but also shows how complicated things can get. Imagine you're running a business or an industry that needs water. There's a rule that lets you use a lot of water, up to 5,000 gallons every day, for a cost of $300. This seems straightforward at first glance. However, things quickly become less clear. The state of Oregon has started installing devices that check how much water is being used from people's wells, which means they're keeping a very close eye on water usage. It feels a bit invasive, like someone is constantly watching over your shoulder, tracking every bit of water you use. These water usage rules aren't new. They say they go back to 1909. But over the years, they've become more and more complicated. It's not just a few farmers who are upset. A large number of small-scale farmers and gardeners are being affected. They're all being told they're not allowed to water their crops anymore because, according to the rules, using water for irrigation doesn't qualify for an exemption. This situation is causing significant difficulties for small-scale farmers. For example, it seems pretty unreasonable to treat a small farm, perhaps one with just a few cows and a basic setup for milking, the same as a large industrial-scale farming operation. It doesn't seem to make any sense. These cows are only kept in a confined space temporarily, just long enough to eat and be milked, before they're let back outside. Then, there's the matter of raising chickens for eggs. Normally, you would keep their food inside to make sure it stays dry. But here's where it gets even more tricky. Doing that could potentially get you into trouble because of Oregon's interpretation of the rules. They might come in and say that you have to shut down your chicken coop unless you can afford to make expensive upgrades to manage water runoff, even for a small coop. This feels like a significant overstep by the authorities, making it excessively difficult for people trying to run small farms or raise a few animals. This aggressive approach to regulating water use on small farms seems like it's creating more problems than it solves. It's putting unnecessary pressure on those who are trying to make a living off the land, or simply trying to be self-sufficient. Many of these small-scale farmers and gardeners rely on their crops and livestock, not just for income, but as a way of life. Being hit with these harsh regulations feels unfair, especially when the rules seem to favor larger commercial and industrial operations that can easily absorb the cost of compliance. Now, as the court steps in, the true effects of these laws show. But there's more happening behind the scenes. The intense pressure on Oregon's local growers. Let's be clear, the issue here isn't about keeping the environment safe or making sure public health is protected. It really seems like some people are bending the rules to support their own goals. It's hard not to notice that the rule doesn't say anything about watering plants, which has made it really tough for a lot of small gardens that sell their produce. It makes you wonder why there's such a strong push against people growing their own food in Oregon, especially the small-time farmers whose farms are so tiny they barely affect the environment with waste or water runoff. This situation doesn't seem to be about challenging the big dairy companies and their powerful lobbyists. It looks more like it's about making things difficult for the small farmers who are just trying to earn a living and provide fresh food for people nearby. Tom Vilsack is a big name in dairy lobbying, having been a major player for the biggest group representing dairy farmers. Remember the famous Got Milk ads? Those campaigns asked dairy farmers to spend money to promote milk, and it turned out to be quite beneficial for Vilsack financially. Now, fast forward to the present, and who do we find in the position of Secretary of Agriculture? That's right, Tom Vilsack himself. The situation is pretty complicated. Many dairy farmers felt trapped, having to pay into marketing programs they might not have fully supported, but they had no choice if they wanted to keep selling their milk. This situation leads to some questions. Did Vilsack and his associates push for these new regulations? Perhaps they didn't like the competition from smaller farms that operate differently from the large, industrial ones they're used to dealing with. And in agriculture politics, it seems like almost anything goes when it comes to getting ahead. The pressure on small-scale farmers doesn't just come from the rules themselves, but also from a system that seems to favor the big players in agriculture. The little guys, the small farmers working tirelessly to cultivate their land and contribute to their communities, find themselves facing uphill battles. These challenges include navigating complicated regulations that don't always take the realities of small-scale farming into account, and potentially facing unfair competition from larger operations with more resources and influence. This story is very much like a small, unlikely hero going up against a giant, where the small hero is our local, hardworking farmers who are finding themselves in a tough spot. Imagine being in a race where your opponent has longer legs, more energy, and even a head start. That's kind of what our small farmers are dealing with. They're being hit with demands for big changes that come with a huge price tag. Changes that they just can't afford without digging deep into their pockets. It's as if they're being told to climb a mountain without any gear. This isn't just a single challenge they're facing. It's coming at them from multiple directions, making their journey even tougher. First, it was the people who grow vegetables in small plots of land who felt this heavy pressure as autumn came. Then, as the new year began, the small milk producers found themselves in the same tight spot. And this issue doesn't pick and choose. It's affecting everyone who's trying to make a living by farming on a small scale, from those who are raising chickens for eggs, to the folks who are tending to pigs, and even those caring for dairy goats. It's a massive problem that threatens to close down anyone brave enough to try to grow or produce their own food. These small-scale farmers aren't looking to compete with the giant agricultural businesses. They're simply trying to earn a living in a way that also serves and nourishes their local communities. It's pretty unlikely that the big agricultural companies spend much time worrying about these small operations. Yet, it seems that there are groups, people who lobby, and associations who have a keen interest in keeping these small farmers under their thumb. It's a bit disheartening to see that the very individuals who are elected to look out for the welfare of the people are the ones who are enforcing these tough regulations. These regulations are not just impacting a few farms here and there. They are disrupting the ways a significant number of people earn their money and live their lives. The situation escalated quickly, with over 25 vegetable growers being forced to shut down almost overnight. This crackdown is enforced in several ways. There's a special phone line set up, so if someone suspects their neighbor is growing and selling vegetables, or perhaps using a bit too much water, they can easily report them. This effectively encourages neighbors to spy on each other. But the monitoring doesn't end there. The use of satellites allows these enforcers to peek into what's happening in people's backyards from the sky. They look for any signs of a small business, like the name of a farm or visible crops. And just like that, those farmers become targets. This level of surveillance feels intrusive and is quite frightening, to be honest. With tensions high and eyes in the sky, there's a bigger story. This Oregon issue is part of a nationwide challenge for small farms. Fighting drought and unfair rules in the fields. Every year there are eyes in the sky, satellites, snapping photos from way up high. They can see every little change we make on our farm. And the next thing you know, you might get a notice saying your taxes are going up because of what those photos picked up. It kind of feels like there's always someone watching us, keeping tabs on every move we make. But that's not the only thing we're dealing with. Let's zoom in on two places that are worlds apart in their struggles. First up, Oregon. The small farmers there are up against a wall, squeezed tight by rules that are really strict. It's like they can't catch a break. Now, swing over to California, and you've got a whole different story, but just as tough. The farmers there are parched, literally. They're scraping by with barely a dribble of water because of unrelenting drought regulations. Imagine trying to make do with only 15% of the water you need to water your crops. And this isn't a one-off, it's a recurring nightmare that keeps playing out. Not just there, but in lots of places across our land. The idea behind these rules was originally good, to make sure there's enough water to go around, to be fair to everyone. But now, it feels like those same rules are being twisted, used in ways that strangle the life out of the very farms they were meant to help. The numbers tell a stark story. Back in 2000, our country had over 2.1 million farms dotting the landscape. Fast forward to the end of last year, and that number has withered away to just under 1.9 million. It's a tough scene, and it paints a picture of two different battles being fought in the same war. On one front, you've got the constant surveillance from above, making you second-guess every decision you make on your own land. On the other, there's this fight against nature's fury and the rules meant to control it, which sometimes feel like they do more harm than good. It's a delicate dance of trying to stay afloat while navigating through a sea of red tape and environmental challenges. What's truly eye-opening is that a big chunk of these farms didn't just disappear over decades, but in the last 4 or 5 years alone. It's as if we're witnessing the core of our agricultural heartland, just withering away at an unprecedented pace. The reasons behind this decline are varied and complex, stretching from the all-too-familiar scare of not having enough water to, would you believe it, issues caused by trout. Yes, you heard that right, trout. These fish, as harmless as they might seem, are stirring up quite the trouble for some farmers. It makes you pause and wonder, how did we find ourselves in this predicament? What lies ahead for us? And when the dust finally settles, who will be left standing, tilling the soil and nurturing the crops? This predicament sheds light on the myriad hurdles that farmers today have to leap over. It's not just the big-ticket problems like drought that make the headlines, but also the lesser-known, quirky challenges like managing fish habitats that play a significant role. Farming is like a jigsaw puzzle, where the pieces include the land, the water, and the livelihoods of those who farm. Finding a balance that serves the earth, conserves water, and supports the farmer's ability to earn a living is no small feat. In Oregon, what we're seeing could easily be described as a big move by those in power to take over. They're coming onto people's land, putting meters on wells, and basically making it extremely difficult for small farms to keep going. This includes all sorts of farms like those raising cows for milk, farms with goats, and places where chickens are kept. They say it's all about protecting the water under the ground that we all rely on. Let's talk about the people who grow food in small gardens for sale, as an example. These folks aren't being careless with water. They're actually very much into understanding how soil works and finding the best ways to keep the ground moist without wasting water. If you compare what they do to the huge farms that work lots of land and use big machines to spray water everywhere, it's a completely different approach. The small farmers aren't using water like it's unlimited. They're very careful and thoughtful about how they water their plants, making sure they're doing it in the best way possible. So, when you think about it, who's really using too much water? The skills these small farmers have in managing their land and growing food are really amazing. Take someone who runs a small dairy farm, for instance. Their cows are usually out eating fresh grass in fields, not stuck inside. And think about the people who have chickens. Those birds aren't kept in tiny spaces. They get to walk around outside, finding things to eat on the ground. This is just another example of how small-scale farming tends to be more in tune with nature, treating the animals well and using resources like water in a smart, careful way. We're getting to the core issue now. It's about whether these laws are too controlling or really needed. Harshness and oppression on the fields. Okay, let's break it down in simpler terms. This whole crackdown thing isn't just about the big farm animals like cows and chickens. No, it's casting a really wide net that might even catch small-time rabbit farmers in its grasp. Imagine this. There are places where rabbits live on concrete floors, but they've got heaps of hay and everything they need to be comfy. But according to the big shots in charge, having just a few rabbits in such a setup could get you tagged as a CAFO. That's just silly, isn't it? Now, here's the really big question. When does the government's good intention of keeping us safe start to go too far? When do all their rules and guidelines stop being about making sure everyone's okay and start feeling more like they just want to boss everyone around? It's like walking on a very slippery hill, my friend. And it seems to lead to a place where people feel like their freedoms are just being stepped all over. Think about it. Shouldn't folks have the freedom to do what they want with what they own, without feeling like someone's always watching over their shoulder? It's about time we really dig into these hard questions and look for some straight answers. Being able to buy food straight from the farm should be something everyone can do. No questions asked. But what's going down in Oregon is a real mess. They're basically shutting down the little guys, the small farmers, and that's taking away everyone in Oregon's chance to have that fresh from the farm food. And they're doing all this under the guise of laws that were supposed to control the big farms and keep our water clean. The situation is pretty messed up. It starts with the best of intentions, sure, but somewhere along the way, it's turned into this big overstepping of boundaries, where small farmers can barely do their thing without worrying about getting in trouble for it. And the worst part? It's the regular folks, just like you and me, who end up losing out on getting good, fresh food because of it. It's time to take a hard look at what's happening and ask, is all this control really necessary? Or is there a better way to keep everyone safe and fed without stepping on our freedom to choose where our food comes from? Here's the thing, boiled down and laid out plain. What's happening is a real twist-up of words and bending rules to fit what some folks in power want. And who's stuck footing the bill? It's regular people like us. People who count on these smaller farms to fill our tables with fresh veggies and meat that hasn't been stuck in a freezer or wrapped in plastic for who knows how long. It's really time for everyone to snap to attention and see the bigger picture. This whole mess, it's not about keeping us safe. Nope, it's about clamping down, about taking a bit more control over what we can and can't do, about what we can and can't eat. Now pay attention to this. Other states are sitting on the sidelines, eyes wide open, watching every move. They're scribbling notes, getting ready, seeing how things pan out here. And once everything quiets down, they'll be itching to roll out the same playbook. It's a pattern that's as old as time. One state decides to see how much they can get away with, pushing boundaries a bit too far. And if nobody raises a big enough fuss, you can bet your bottom dollar that it won't be long before others start hopping on the same train. We're talking about a really slippery slope here, one that's slick with risks we just can't take. What's going down in Oregon isn't just an isolated incident. It's a big, blaring alarm. The way they're coming down hard, it's not just a local issue. It's like dropping a stone in a pond. The ripples are going to spread out far and wide. They're setting up a playbook that's dangerous, one that could start flipping the same switches in places far beyond their own backyard. And let's be crystal clear, this isn't only about where our food comes from. It digs a lot deeper, right down into the bedrock of our basic rights. So we're standing at a crossroads here, looking down a path that could lead to more than just a few bad rules about farming. It's a path that could start chipping away at the very freedoms we hold dear. Imagine a world where what you put on your dinner table isn't up to you anymore, where the choices about what to eat, where to buy it, or how to grow it aren't really yours to make. That's the kind of future we're nudging closer to if things don't change. It's a future where the simple, good stuff, like picking up a basket of apples grown by someone who actually cares about their craft, or choosing to support the little guy trying to make a living off the land, becomes a thing of the past. When the people who run the show start telling us what we can and can't do with our own bits of earth and water, we're heading down a dangerous path that could lead to some really bad places. It feels like a slap in the face to everything our country stands for. Despite all the mess and worry this causes, there's a little bit of light at the end of the tunnel. People are starting to see things for what they really are. They're getting behind the small-time farmers, recognizing these folks as the real champions in this story. These farms are more than just places to do business. They're the heart of what keeps our communities going strong. They give us food, keep us healthy, and tie us to the earth in a way that's getting harder to find these days. But we're not out of the woods yet. This battle is just getting started. To really turn things around, we've got to come together and push back against the government sticking its nose where it doesn't belong. It's time to get loud, make our voices heard, and tell the people in charge that they need to remember who they're working for. That's us, the folks back home. We also can't underestimate the power of starting from the ground up. Every single penny we spend is like casting a vote for the kind of place we want to call home. When we choose to back our local farmers and shops, we're making it loud and clear that we're not okay with being pushed around. We've got to rally the troops, get everyone on board, and make a big stink about this. We've got to flood our leaders with messages, show up where it counts, and vote with our wallets. We're telling them, hey, you're supposed to be on our side, remember? And it's not just about making noise, it's about following through. Showing up at town meetings, writing letters, supporting those who have our backs, and maybe even running for office ourselves, if that's what it takes. By choosing where we spend our money, we're painting a picture of the world we want to see. Do we want a world where only the big guys get to call the shots? Or one where there's room at the table for everyone? Supporting our local farmers and businesses isn't just good for them. It's a stand against a system that tries to tell us we don't have a say. Could Oregon's crackdown on small farms be a disguise for larger, undisclosed motives? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more insights.